Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the messy middle of being out on your own and starting over with the people who've done it. I'm your host, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into today's story of starting over. Hello and welcome. I'm so excited to share this amazing story of starting over with you today because when I was listening back and editing up this chat, I just had the biggest smile on my face. My guest, Jess Eggleston, the creator of SABI Stays, is just the most genuine and warm human, and her perfect realness just lights me up and very often cracks me up. The thing that's been on my mind since recording this chat is the absolute beauty in the unknown. When you take yourself on a professional or creative journey, really any journey, you can't predict the people you'll meet and how they might impact your life. You might have a vague sense of your overall goal, or if you're the opposite to me, maybe a strong one. But the things that happen along the way are far richer than anything you can plan for. And just one example, when I first smooshed my hands into clay, I certainly didn't think that I'd end up creating a custom range of perfectly imperfect homewares for an accommodation and design space like SABI. And Jess certainly didn't imagine what was waiting for her on the other side of renovating a gorgeous little place on the east coast of Tasmania. SABI has been featured in Qantas Mag, Vogue Living, Country Style, and the Design Files. I mean, no biggie, right? And in this chat today, we talk about following the feeling that you're meant to do something else, in quotation marks, despite spending an exorbitant amount of time studying and working in a completely different career. We talk about lifting the lid of creativity and backing your vision, and the inevitable fear of what people might think, or God forbid say, in their reviews. I hope you enjoy my chat with the glorious Jess. My guest today started as a creative colleague when we embarked on a ceramics collaboration, and now she has become a very dear friend. It's Jess Eggleston, the creative force behind the inspired accommodation SABI. SABI is a pared-back wabi-sabi cabin in the heart of the Bay of Fires in Tasmania. Described as a refuge of calm that's free from distraction. It's your space to breathe, have permission to rest. SABI is just simply a retreat that beckons solitude and stillness. If you're unfamiliar with the concept, wabi-sabi is a worldview centered on the acceptance and transience of imperfection. The aesthetic is sometimes described as one of appreciating beauty that is imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete in nature. A perfect metaphor for the journey of creating something new, challenging, scary, and very exciting. Jess, welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. We're going to start with a little bit of an icebreaker now. Not necessarily that you and I need a little bit of an icebreaker because we know each other beautifully. We've been on a creative journey. We've gone through all the ups and downs. But for the listeners, a little icebreaker question. I'm wondering, how would your glorious kids describe you?
Oh, they're only 5 and 4, so it's probably quite a narrow view. A dag, I think. Nurturing. I mean, being a mother, there's always that sort of loving side that they see. But I think I'm their security. I love my kids to say I'm fun, but there's something to do. So you're finding that balance between trying to be that person, but then also being the parent. But yeah, definitely nurturing, I think, would probably be their take.
I would back them in on that. So before SABI Stays, or even the idea of an accommodation space was coming into your mind, who were you?
Oh, do you know what? I have to kind of remind myself of this a little bit. It feels like let's go before children.
BC.
Yeah, let's go BC. So obviously Hugh's now 5 and Poppy's 4. Who was I? I was, and I still am, but in a different way, very driven person, always striving to do more and to do better, much to probably my own detriment. And I think that's where you and I have probably a lot in common. I was, in terms of career, I'll just give you backstory?
Yeah.
An intelligence analyst, actually. I started off as a graduate for one of the national intelligence agencies and did the whole graduate program and learned how to be, but a lot of people don't know what an intelligence analyst is, so like a crime analyst, but it's effectively analysing lots and lots and lots of information and putting a puzzle together and writing reports and informing government and strategy and a whole host of things. And then continued on that path, trained as a criminologist, and then worked for a state law enforcement body, again as a specialist intel analyst, working in strategic intel. So a couple of different forms of intel. I wasn't operational, I was more strategic. So always looking forward sort of 5-10 years out and looking at trends in crime and patterns in crime and predicting really where we needed to employ resources, etc. So I used to work for VicPol, Victoria Police, because I was back in Victoria then, now in Tassie, which is where we met. And after quite a few years being an intelligence analyst, I found myself coming back to my original interest, which was criminal psychology. So when I finished school, I went and did a Bachelor of Arts in Melbourne and doubled majors in criminology and psychology. And the plan was always to go on and do forensic psych, criminal psychology, because a few people are not familiar with forensic psychology. And I struggled to get work, which a lot of psychology students experience once you've finished your undergraduate. It's really, really hard to get in. And I don't think I was quite ready. I was quite young. And so I thought, well, I've got this other arm, I've got this criminology side of me, so let's have a look at the criminology space. And that's how I got into law enforcement or intel. I was not a sworn member, I was a civilian. I think I must have done that for 5-8 years, something like that. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, I can't ignore this drive of my interest in the psychology, and it just sort of got the better of me. So this is probably the point where I had that sort of unemployed and afraid moment, because it was, you know, I had an incredible career, I was tracking really well, I had amazing opportunities, and I had to be honest with myself and say, look, this is so embarrassing. I wear my heart on my sleeve, which is quite ironic as a psychologist. But look at me choking up. You can edit that bit out, Kim. But yeah, I found myself in a really difficult position because I was really committed. I loved my work, but there was just something missing. And I just wanted to do more, which is very much my nature. And so I made the really hard decision and I resigned from Victoria Police and that whole world of policing and intelligence, which was just fascinating. And I actually went back as, well, a mature age student. Oh, God, what would have I been? Probably my early 30s. And enrolled and did my doctorate in forensic psychology. And so I spent 4 years full-time, because when you enroll in a DPsych, you can't work because it's full-time. And so I did that for like 4 years. So that was it was full on, but then you struggle while you're not working. And I was married and my husband was incredibly supportive, which is interesting because we'll come back to that because that links back into SABI. And yeah, went on and did all my psychology, finished my DPsych. Just in the last 12 months of doing the DPsych, a lot of friends around us were, had all been having children. I think we'd been married for like 10 years. So Fred and I were the first to get married and the last to have children, which is quite funny. And I remember just thinking, everyone around us has been having so much trouble. It's going to take us, at least 2 years to fall pregnant. No, I fell pregnant right when I was sort of finishing off my thesis. And so then Hugh came along. And then think the best thing probably to say is I probably didn't concentrate and listen in biology in school. And then at 3 months, Hugh was 3 months old and then fell pregnant with Poppy. So Poppy and Hugh are Irish twins. So they're less than a year apart. They're like 51 weeks apart. So right at the end of my doctorate, had 2 children and really then started working as a psychologist in forensic mental health settings and prisons, which I just loved, and then was just about to embark on a dream career and the opportunity came up for us to move to Tassie. So hard decision, but lifestyle won, and we made the move to Tassie. So very long-winded backstory. But yeah, that's sort of how we came to be where we are now.
A fascinating backstory, not long-winded by any way, shape or form. I have so many questions about that world of criminal psychology, of forensic psychology, that I could do an entire podcast on that.
Yeah, that's a separate one, isn't it?
Yes, because it's absolutely fascinating. But gosh, it must have been pretty overwhelming to take on
a doctorate at that stage and make that huge life change without knowing what was going to come out the other end?
Yeah, I think I just got to the point where I was having a lot of internal conflict about what I wanted to achieve with my life and where I was sort of going. And I just got to that point where I thought I had to be honest with myself. And I just thought, you know what, if you don't do this now, you'll regret it. And I wasn't prepared to take that risk. And it's, you know, like it's been something I've wanted to do since I can remember. This is so embarrassing. I used to sit at the dining table as, you know, like in my teenage years of school, and I used to get told to put my criminal profiling books away because they were too gory and it wasn't appropriate material at the table for dinner time and stuff like that. So it's been something that I'd had to do it, which is kind of funny because then, you know, children then moving. And I think this is very much where it fits in with that sort of unemployed and afraid. And yes, I've done SABI, or we still are, but you take on this commitment, you do it, you achieve it. And I'm a bit bad like that. I kind of set myself these goals and these targets and I won't stop until I achieve it. But then once you do, when you go tick, then where I'm really bad is I'm always then looking to the next thing. So, you know, there's that real balance of like, well, I've got this incredible qualification. I love it. Now I need to start revisiting. And I've been saying this, I reckon, for nearly 12 months, revisiting it and looking at getting back into my psych practice because it is a big part of who I am.
That's so interesting. I can't imagine how stressful it will be working in that space as well. You teed it up perfectly by saying you wear your heart on your sleeve.
Yeah,
you have a big heart. You know, I love the feels. I love the feels so much. But then to work in that space, goodness, that must be, you know, very overwhelming.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I'm quite an oxymoron because I'm highly analytic and it's in my training and it's always the way I've been. And yet I'm quite emotional has such a negative connotation and it shouldn't. But I'm a rather sensitive, again, negative connotation, but I do wear my heart on my sleeve. So I'm a real feeling person, but then put the psychology hat on, you're sitting across from someone, you're doing an assessment, because I'm more assessment focused rather than therapeutic, you know, so it's that, again, it goes back to that puzzle. I'm all about putting the puzzle together and the pieces of the puzzle. That's the intellectual side of me that I find that stimulates me. I can't lie to save myself. And yet that's what I do for a living. It's all about, you know, trying to get to the bottom of it. You know, it's just, again, it's just ironic, really.
It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, you could write a book very easily. Here's a really lame question for you. Do you listen to crime podcasts?
Oh, do you know what? I can't do it. I can't.
I'm not surprised.
I used to watch CSI when I was in high school, and then it just got to the point where you're just sitting there watching and you're just like, oh, I just can't do this. I mean, that's so inaccurate or just irritating. And then I listened to podcasts, and my poor husband, we used to do it in the car, and, you know, I'd be there with all my theories and hypotheses, and he's like, Jess, can we just listen to them? Can we just listen? You know, and I was already trying to put it all together. And then I go, that's not deduction. They shouldn't be, that's not the right, you know, terrible.
Oh, no. I mean, it sounds like you're very good at your job, though.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so take me into that space where you're moving to Tasmania. Yeah. I'll make an assumption here that this might be for your husband's work and an opportunity, and you had the little ones, and it was just kind of the right timing to make a bit of a move to another state for you. How did that feel when you landed here?
Oh, it was amazing. Like, right timing. Let's just qualify that for a second. So I was in sleep school with Poppy because I had two children. Bless Hugh. Hugh's first night of sleep, and I'm not going to talk about kids the whole episode, but this gives you context. Hugh's first night of sleep was when I went into hospital in labour having Poppy. That was his first night.
Oh, my gosh.
And then I came home with Poppy. So it was just like, and then, yeah, she wasn't a good sleeper to start with. So I was in sleep school and delirious. And Fred, I just will never forget this moment. He walks in. He'd been trying to get me. We used to live in a city, Melbourne, so it was fabulous because pram, you know, walk everywhere, everything at your fingertips, you know, the old life. And he was quite keen to move tree change, sort of out to sort of, you know, Macedon Way. And as much as I love that idea, I just wasn't quite ready with two kiddies. I just wanted to have that sense of community rather than try and break into a new one. And I'll never forget, he walked in to sleep school and he's like, so what do you think about Tasmania? And I'm like, that sounds amazing. And it is. I'm not saying it's not. I wasn't delirious to my detriment. It was just such a funny way of That's so Fred and I, though. That is that just tees us up. We do overthink things, but we also just go with the flow. And it was just an opportunity. We thought, what's the worst that could happen? We don't like it and we come back. And well, we're not going back. We love it. We love it. It was a hard move because we literally knew nobody. We had no family, no friends. I think I'd been to Hobart once. We live in the north, by the way, but yeah, I'd never really been here much. So I didn't know what to expect, but it's been so fabulous. The lifestyle's incredible. It's such a nice balance. You know, we were 6 k's from the city of Melbourne and Fred was commuting, like, you know, sometimes depending on the West Gate, it'd be an hour and a half. It's like 15 minutes here and it's cruisy, but in a good way. Yeah, in a really good way. So loving it.
Yeah, I forget what that's like. That's that inner city commute. So, good reminder. So, Jess, what prompted the move into accommodation? Take me on that journey.
Look, Fred and I do love property. We're always researching and looking at property. And there was no intention to move into accommodation. We literally moved here in September of 2019. And then we were having a big family reunion. So Fred's family, my family, we're all kind of convening in Tassie for Christmas and doing a road trip. And Fred's parents had recently acquired a camper van. And I don't think my mum would do camping unless her life depended. Like it's just not my mum. Anyway, we hired like 3 motorhomes and went on this sort of convoy around the East Coast. And I had read about Bay of Fires, but I'd read about Billabong Bay and seen photos. And we're like, right, that is like the number one destination. I grew up in Papua New Guinea, so islands are my utopia. And so I'd seen photos of this incredible turquoise water and like just out of this world. So like, we have to find this place. So we went on the hunt. Anyway, lo and behold, we got there and just taken aback. It was sleepy seaside hamlet with this like stunning beaches. And, you know, come from Melbourne where you just don't get spaces like that are empty and deserted. And it was just stunning. And so what do we naturally on the phones, looking at property, just like this place is, you know, which is we always do that when we go away. We can't help ourselves. And it was Christmas time, so everything was closed. And then we got back home and I had found something that was just a little bit, you know, left of field, which is SABI. And got home, and I'll remember this because my sister-in-laws were inside with my husband, and I so sneaky, I was like, they're going to think I'm bonkers. I am not letting anyone hear me. I went out onto the deck, rang the real estate agent and made inquiries about this house. And the next day we were off to go and look at it. So it was one of those things where, I mean, you could say it found us, but obviously I was actively, like I was looking, but we went and we walked in, and still to this day, what astounds me is that as a house and as the fabric of the house and the architecture and the overall aesthetic, that it was antithesis of me. You know, like orange pine boards, maroon, no offense to anyone who's got orange pine boards. I was just like 1980s sauna, but in a bad way. And, you know,
Oh, I know. Yeah. You know? Yes, I know. I should tell that story.
You need to tell that story.
Yeah. So for those playing at home, this very house that Jess is speaking of that became SABI was the house that my partner and I very nearly moved into because we were relocating to Tasmania, looking at the East Coast, just wanted to be close to the water, just to get away from everything mid-COVID and just totally reset and rebuild our lives. And I was drawn to this cute little chalet that, definitely needed some work on the inside, but we just thought, you know what, this is going to be adorable. We're just going to go live here for a bit, see how it is. And we were almost about to rent it. And then I think this is when this moment happened for you.
Yeah, I mean, the damn landlords decided rudely to not lease it and just crack on with renovating it.
We were always meant to meet each other. It is, you know, the universe works in very funny ways.
I'll never forget that, Kim, getting that DM from you going, I think I was the one that was going to rent your house. And I think my heart sunk because I felt really guilty.
Please, we've had a great house. It was after that, it was meant for us.
I just didn't think it was suitable for anyone. Those maroon curtains, like I just couldn't do it.
They were pretty hectic, but yeah, we started to get connected then, and as people come into your life in an interesting way, because you started to develop this space, and that's I'm really interested to know is. So you've gotten the house and you've got this ambition to renovate it. That must have felt like a really overwhelming task at that stage.
It was, and I'm sorry because I'm a shock. I didn't actually answer your question. Whoops, get used to that. So it's not that we were looking for accommodation. We found the house, and really, we actually even hadn't found a house, like a family home for us in Tassie. We were renting on this incredible farm. It was just idyllic. And then we found SABI, and we moved ahead, and there was months of negotiation, but we ended up securing it, obviously. And I had just started, I call it self-imposed leave, because I'd literally not taken any leave for, I don't know. I actually don't know how long. And then having had 2 children, and I never really did maternity leave because I was always writing a thesis. So I'd never really had any leave. And I was like, right. It was May, what must have been 2020. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have some leave. And it happened to coincide with COVID, which were obviously not planned. And I think it was day 5. And I remember Fred saying to me, and this just sums him up, because this is how gorgeous he is. He's like, I want to see you on the couch watching TV and doing nothing, because I can't do nothing. Doing nothing but watching TV. I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay, yep, great. Sounds amazing. Yeah. It was like day 5, and I'm on the couch, and he walks past, because he was working from home, and he walks past, and I'm there on my laptop, and he stopped and he looked at me and he said, what are you doing? I said, nothing. So no, what are you doing? And I discovered, my sister put me onto it, the hosting masterclass, which was the Sarah Andrews course, because we realised that we were going to have to rent it out if we were going to make this viable. So I didn't know anything about an Airbnb. I knew about renovating. We'd renovated before and done design and stuff before, but I didn't know about the business side of how to run an Airbnb. So I kind of looked at that. I enrolled online, and my leave turned into like study number whatever. And I kind of went down the rabbit hole and embarked on this hosting masterclass, did it online. And that's kind of really how things evolved, and SABI became SABI, really. I wasn't meant to take leave.
I relate to that a lot. My partner often tells me the same thing. It's like, if you're going to have a time off, if you're going to have a relaxing afternoon, for God's sakes, can you just actually relax?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to read the next self-help book or, scroll on Instagram so you feel like you're catching up with people and with things. Just for God's sakes, watch a crappy TV show and relax. So I can totally relate to that. So you've got this space, you're moving into the accommodation space, you're starting to explore the idea of SABI as a business. And there's people out there who find a beautiful space or a beautiful house and see the opportunity to turn it into something, to turn it into a small business, an accommodation that people will want to travel to get to, a destination accommodation, essentially. So there's people who do that. And then there's people who do what you've done, which is create a brand, a feeling, what is essentially a design piece. It's something that you walk into, and it is like, it's art, basically. It's a real destination space. I mean, what sparked this passion for design? And I will say the intense, very small micro details that go into it to make it as special as it is.
I'm a passionate person, and I think it's a strength, but it's also a bit of a fault of mine. I can't do things by halves. If I'm going to do something, my feet can't move fast enough. And the way it kind of evolved, I mean, it was an indulgence for me, because all of a sudden I was parking my academic intellectual side of Jess, and I had given myself permission to not work. So that part of me was on pause. And so really, I mean, it's been like, it's going to be one of those, like, see, I'm going to choke up. So I'm really like, I'm being honest. Because it was just, and I'll always have this in my life, and I'll always have this moment to look back on and appreciate and value, because it was my opportunity to really throw myself into a creative project. I cannot draw to save myself. I'm not creative in that sense, but my creativity comes out in interiors and designing spaces. I love it, Kim. Like, it gives me such a buzz. I love that moment where you can see what a space is going to be, like in your mind. Then you go about creating it. It's addictive in a way. So I think that passion's there. Like I said, we've renovated before and I've really enjoyed it. But in the past, I've always had other priorities, like my studies, like my work, and I've never been able to fully immerse myself in the process, which is why this has been so special, because it was, I was just talking about it to Fred the other night, like how lucky were we that I was afforded that opportunity to give my whole time and my whole self to this process. So I had the time to think about, well, I don't want to just go and buy plates off the shelf. That's not fitting. I want something crafted. I want something curated, and go through that design process with you. Like I could go down the rabbit hole with every detail and make it something truly one-off. I think too, I don't think we realise it when we set out, but our lives have been so hectic and so busy. Like we renovated our house in Melbourne, we sold it, we moved. We'd had 2 babies in that time. We moved, then we moved interstate, started a new job. Like it's been very full on. And in a way, creating SABI has almost been creating that respite that we needed. So it's aspirational, because it's that idea of we would love to live like that. We would love to live with 4 plates and 4 bowls and 4 knives and 4 spoons, not cupboards full of, it's aspirational. And I think it's what we've been craving without realising it. So we created this space that we could just go to and just be. Yeah.
It's so cool. It's such a beautiful way to look at it. What challenged you the most throughout the process of the renovation and preparing to launch it?
Well, one bit, and you'll laugh, and it still challenges me, Instagram was definitely one of them. I didn't even know what the Instagram icon looked like. My poor sister, who's in social media, had to show me what it looked like so I knew how to find it. So that's been, not really playing to my strong suit, because as I said to you, the idea of talking to someone, I don't like my photo being taken, let alone being videoed for a podcast, let alone talking about myself, with pins, please. So to put, our project up in lights for everyone to see, that just is so foreign to me. So that was a challenge. But in terms of the renovation, actually, at the start, our intention was we did it all ourselves. That wasn't our intention at the outset. We had thought, yes, fabulous, we'll go down on the weekend, we'll tinker, but we'll get the relevant trades to do this and to do that. And we couldn't find anyone because of COVID, East Coast, extremely remote. Everyone was so busy. I did have a couple of trades come in and I would describe what I'd wanted, and they would try and talk me out of it and roll their eyes and think I was some kind of wondering what on earth. And I'm like, okay, yeah. I think even one stage Fred actually left the meeting physically by walking away, but that challenge actually in itself has been the silver lining, because it then has meant we did everything ourselves. So that's great, because Fred, he has this skill set that he never thought he would have. We can enjoy the space knowing we've done every single thing. But in terms of a challenge, it took so much longer than we had ever anticipated. We'd go down on a Friday to a Sunday. When we started, Hugh was 3, Poppy was 2, not even. And so in terms of productivity, a weekend where Fred and Jess would have once upon a time smashed out heaps of stuff, all of a sudden you've got 4 to 6 hours of work time spaced over a weekend. So that was probably the biggest challenge, just trying to keep pushing and getting stuff done on a weekend. And then you get so committed, you're so far down the path, you can't back out. You don't want to back out, but you also need a break. And so it took a toll, because it was all we were doing for 2 years, every weekend. So in terms of a challenge, we've got this amazing space and it's loved by everyone who comes, but it took a toll. It had an impact on our relationship. As great as it was for the kiddies, we really weren't doing anything other than just that. So our life here in Tassie and becoming part of the community got delayed because we weren't meeting people. So yes, it's not all what's the saying? It's not all shiny, it's not all roses. And also I think we get this amnesia about the renovation. We'll sit there and be like, look at this space, it's amazing. And we so quickly forgot. We're living in deck chairs and inflatable mattresses, no electricity. It was just nuts.
That's just such a fascinating journey. So then there must have been a time where you had to stop renovating and say, this is done and we're finished, to as finished as can get, and start to become a business. Where did you start with that side of learning?
Oh, I think I still am learning, Kim. Like, I know Fred's always like 80-20 rule, Jess, 80-20 rule. I'm like, I don't do 80-20. I need to. I am a recovering perfectionist. That's what I like to say, which again is so ironic because wabi sabi is all about, you know, and I think this is what's so fascinating about this journey. Again, I'm not answering your question, but in terms of making a business, we just got to the point where we had to open. It was a cash flow thing. You know, we put everything into it and it just had to open. We just had to start getting bookings. And there's that hosting masterclass saying, you know, finished is better than perfect. And I just had to keep reminding myself of that. But where I'm not good is because it is no one knows me, no one knows us, but you're putting something out there to the world or Tasmania. And so therefore it represents you. So I struggle to put something out there because you're basically opening yourself up and saying, take your best swing, criticize us, love us, whatever you want to do. So you've got to be prepared that you are happy with what you've put out there. And I think that was a big challenge for me, because unless it's, you know, there's still things that I know that I want to be doing and that should be there that no one would know any otherwise and any different, but I do. So yes, that's hard. But yeah, look, in terms of it being a business, it happened. And a big deadline for us was our first professional photo shoot. And in hindsight, I probably would have been good to wait a little bit longer, but then in reality not, because you can't just keep pushing a deadline. Yes, I do procrastinate, but that was a big thing for us, was that photo shoot, because it had to be done in time for that. So once that happened, then we were like, okay, we've had photos done, we're ready.
And gosh, they look fantastic. So how did it feel to welcome your first guest?
Nerve-wracking. Because you put your heart and soul into it, you try so hard to not take it personally, but you just want people to experience it the way you experience it, and you want them to love it, and you're waiting for that moment. Like, I know it'll happen. Someone at some point, it hasn't happened yet, but I know it will happen, won't like it, won't be happy with it. And we're just going to have to be okay with that. And I think Fred's been really good at sort of moderating me and my expectations, and sort of saying, look, it is polarizing. It's not for everyone. You know, it's a very different space. So in terms of, you know, you'd think I would remember exactly who. I think it was a designer from Sydney who came, and she has a beautiful store in Sydney that sells a lot of Japanese pieces, and she just loved it. And even to this day, I am so sad, desperately waiting to hear what guests think, you know, because it brings genuine joy, because you don't create something like this if your drive and your intention is not to actually create something special to share with others. So it actually does matter. We haven't been about, awesome, let's just have this, put this place up, rent it, and it's an Airbnb. That's not what we're about. It was born out of going and experiencing places. And no offense to anyone else out there, but a real pet peeve of mine is you go somewhere and you can tell it's all the homewares and furniture that they no longer want, and it's a mishmash, and it's not, I'm not talking eclectic vintage, I'm talking we don't need that anymore, let's just put it in the beach house. And yet, you know, I know I'm probably being a bit unfair, but I can't stand that. You pay to stay somewhere, and I want to know that I'm getting something for my money. So that's been a big thing with us. We really want and have wanted guests to feel valued. So that's why it is the way that it is.
In I guess a show of solidarity, I completely understand how you feel with regards to feedback. It is exciting, exhilarating, and terrifying. I know the exact number of negative reviews I've had on this podcast. It's 2 people have given me 1 star, and it devastates me to my deepest core. Whether or not it's an accident on the Apple podcast, I like to tell myself that. But it's very scary, and you create something for people to love, and you create something from your heart as a gift to give back. And it is a scary moment. So I can completely align with you on that, and I completely understand on the other end of the spectrum, my reviews that are 5 stars and people who go to the effort to write something, which is the 99% majority of the reviews. Doesn't cancel out those 2. I'm still thinking about the 2, but when they come in and you read them, and or if I get a DM on Instagram or anything, and someone says, thank you, or wow, or this has made me feel this way, and it is so incredibly exhilarating. And I think it's a real point for anyone listening that we all experience this fear when you put something out there, whether it's you doing something or it's a product you're putting out that you've created. We all feel terrified about what's going to come back and how we're going to be represented in that way, and what it is as a representation of us. It's a real challenge. And to anyone listening, if you have the opportunity to give feedback to something you're enjoying,
yes,
absolutely do it. The amount of Google reviews I do now that I have a product that can be reviewed is absolutely off its head. Like, not even podcasts. I'm like, if I go to a cafe and it's a good cuppa, I'm like, good cuppa, you get 5 stars.
Isn't it amazing? And how much you value when people take the time to write a review. It means so much. You and I, we must be like just review, like Google's like, oh, there's been a bit of a, we're trending with all.
Seriously, my Google profile, it's like, it's gone from like 1 review on some horrible nail salon that I didn't like in Sydney to like 1,500 reviews of every place I've ever been to or ever experienced. So yes, I completely understand. It's a part of business that you don't think of, you don't prepare yourself for. It's a part of creation you don't prepare yourself for. You worry so much in the first instance about what your friends and family are going to think, which I think sometimes is a really, you talk about that moment standing on the balcony, like everyone's going to think I'm crazy. And, I feel that all the time with anything I'm creating. Oh gosh, what's that person I used to work with 10 years ago going to think? Or what's my mum and dad going to think? What's the world going to think? That's one battle to get through. And then you have the other battle of what's the general public going to think about this now that I've gone and done this thing? So it's very relatable.
That's the difference, because it's all well and good. It's an idea, it's a concept. And, at least with SABI, with the renovation, it's all task orientated. So it's like you're moving through it. But then it comes a point where you're like, oh, hold on a second. This is now actually out there for people to experience. And I know I'm going to have to develop a thick skin, but I think it's just because when you've really poured your whole self into it, it's a reflection of you. So you do take the feedback, it's of immense importance. And we never tire of it. I don't think we ever will, because you've created it for people. That's why you've put it there. You haven't done it just to like, oh, well, while we're not using it, it started off like that. It started off as it was going to be our family holiday, and it still is our family holiday destination. But the creation of what we've done has been purely to share with others. And so it does matter.
Yeah, I totally agree. So now you're in that space where it's up and running, and we're talking off air a little bit about just the exciting steamroll of that, and press starts to come through and you start to get feedback and things are going really positively. What might be next for you in this space?
Oh, it's like the question, like, well, do you really want to ask that? Like, it's lifted a lid. It's like the lid of my creativity now. The lid's gone. It's lifted, and I don't think I can put it back on. We have so many ideas, Kim. The plan, it was sort of always to sort of test like the proof of concept in SABI to see how it's received, and it's just going off the charts, which is just fabulous. So now that we know that there's a real appetite for that sort of aesthetic and that design and that stay, hence SABI Stays, is to then go on and create more. So the vision is to create, or the next one will be Little SABI. And I look at me, I can't keep a seat. I'm shocking. There's so many ideas, but we'll do another. We've got a couple of different ideas of different locations and different sort of settings. And even, I cannot let my parents or my in-laws hear this podcast, but our own home is this incredible 1890s heritage in an amazing location in Tassie, and it lends itself so beautifully to wabi sabi. So we're toying very seriously with the idea of potentially turning this we need to renovate it, whether we actually renovate it as a wabi sabi house for ourselves or whether we actually turn it into another sabi property. It'd be very, very different, but, you know, always pushing the envelope. So there's that. I've had a lot of inquiries about our bed linen and homewares and furniture. So I'm quite keen on a wabi sabi shop. Again, yeah, that's something that we're looking at. I toy from time to time. Again, like you and I joke about this, I really need 3 of ourselves. I can't even keep up with the stuff that we are doing. But whether we look at sort of consulting from a design perspective, that might be something that's on the cards. Either way, Sabi will grow, and then I need to find a balance because I can't go back to doing psychology work full time. I think really the lesson for me has been how important and how much I value the creative side. I need to have a balance. I've not had that. I've always been very analytic or in my head, and I'm learning that for fulfillment and just that sort of personal satisfaction, I need to have both. So I've got to try and work out how I do that. Lots of ideas.
I'm trying to imagine any kind of executional idea that brings forensic psychology and the experience of SABI Stays. Or maybe you develop a new type of assessment room that just gets the answers out of them really quickly. It'll be a very unique collaboration. But look, I think the way you've thrown yourself into this without a plan and without an end goal in mind other than this feels right and I'm going to follow this energy and I'm going to see where it goes and it feels right to make it bigger and it feels right to make it more. I think it's incredibly inspiring for a lot of people. Seeing the end goal sometimes can be a real challenge, I find, in this space, because you see somebody else's end goal and you think, my goodness, how did they know that they would get there and be able to do that? And I think just by sharing your story today, you've shown that, do you know what? You don't necessarily know, but you follow an instinct and this is what can happen. So I think that's just really empowering.
Oh, yeah, I think that's the thing. And trusting yourself too. Just going with it. That's a huge part of it.
How can the listener and I support you on your journey moving forward? What can we do for you?
A shout out on Instagram would be great. A follow, that would be amazing. Come and stay, come and experience what we've created. That would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll make sure I put the link to your Instagram, to the website in the show notes so that listener can go. Of course, this is an audio experience, so we can't quite give the concept of Sabi without those beautiful visuals. So if you haven't yet already seen this gorgeous space, please do go have a look and see this special creation that Jess and Fred have made. Also with Hugh and Poppy, very important stylists as part of the journey. But it's been such a pleasure to have you on today.
And Herb, the golden.
I cannot forget Herb, the giant doggy.
Oh my gosh, the apprentice, between the 3 of them. No wonder we got no work done, honestly. Thanks so much, Kim. We could gas bag all day. Sorry, listeners.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the stories of starting over with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you liked the episode and are keen to hear more, please hit the follow button and leave a review. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram @unemployedandafraid, where there's more goodies and links to today's show notes. See you there.